The Boy and the Candle in the Window. Every night he lit a candle for his father at sea. He never dreamed one small flame could guide a ship home. On the far edge of a seaside village, where the land curved into the ocean like a quiet sigh, there stood a small wooden house painted the color of salt and memory. Its shutters creaked in the wind. Its porch wore the marks of 1,000 storms, and from its kitchen window you could see the lighthouse blinking patiently across the bay. In that house lived a boy named Oliver, his mother Margaret, and a cat named Whiskers, who never once caught a mouse, but believed he could if he really tried. Oliver was 10 that winter, full of questions and wonder, and a little too much courage for his own good. His father, Captain Samuel Wren, had been gone at sea for almost 6 months aboard a cargo ship bound for northern waters. Each night, when the wind grew sharp and the tide hissed against the rocks, Oliver would press his face to the window and whisper to the waves, "Come home soon, Dad." The people of the village adored Margaret Wren. She baked bread for the fishermen, mended torn coats, and always smiled, even when her eyes were tired. But everyone knew, because everyone knows such things in small towns, that she waited more than she slept. And every night, without fail, she placed a candle in the window. The candle was thick and white, with a brass holder that caught the light just so. She lit it when the sun went down, and it burned until dawn. "So your father can see his way home," she told Oliver. "Every ship needs a light." Oliver believed her completely. The Heart's winter, a storm. Coming that December, the weather turned wild. The sea had moods, everyone said, but that winter it seemed to have secrets too. The waves rose higher, and the gulls flew inland. The radio at the harbor talked of storms farther north, the kind that sent even the bravest captain searching for calm water. One evening the clouds rolled in early. The sky turned the color of pewter, and the wind began to hum against the chimney. Margaret closed the shutters and checked the latch on the door. Oliver fed Whiskers, who didn't like the sound of thunder any more than he did. "Do you think Dad's in the storm?" Oliver asked quietly. Margaret paused, her hand still on the window latch. "I think your father knows how to find the stars," she said softly, "and the stars know how to find him." After dinner, they lit the candle as always. Oliver watched the flame sway and steady itself as though it were breathing. He liked how it glowed against the glass, sending a golden streak into the darkness outside. "Can I keep it burning tonight?" he asked. His mother hesitated. "It's a strong wind. It might blow out." "I'll watch it," he promised, "like Dad would." She looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. "All right, my love, you can keep the watch." And so, when she went to bed, Oliver stayed by the window. Whiskers curled on his lap, purring softly, and the candlelight danced across the walls. Outside, the storm began to speak in earnest, long, rolling gusts, the crash of surf, the whistle through the eaves. But the flame held steady, as if it knew it had a promise to keep. The spark of wonder, the light that reached the sea. Near midnight, the world seemed made of sound and shadow. The sea roared, the rain pressed hard against the panes. Oliver could hardly see the harbor through the blur. He pressed his palm against the glass. "Come home," he whispered. "Please, come home." For a long while there was only wind. Then, just as he leaned closer, he saw something strange. Far out across the black water, a flash of light blinked once, then twice. It wasn't lightning, it was steady, deliberate. It blinked again, matching the rhythm of the candle. Oliver's heart jumped. "Mom!" he called, running to her room. "Mom, I saw something." She sat up instantly. Together, they hurried to the window. The candle flame trembled but did not go out. "There," he said, pointing. "Do you see it?" Margaret squinted into the storm. The beam from the lighthouse swept across the waves, but in the moment between flashes, she saw it too. A smaller light, a ship's lantern, far out, dipping and rising in the dark. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, Samuel!" Oliver's pulse hammered in his ears. "It's him, isn't it?" "I don't know," she said, tears gathering, "but someone's out there, and they're looking for home." They stood in silence, watching the tiny light blink back at them through the storm. Then Margaret whispered, "We can't let it fade." The power flickered. The room went dark except for the candle. Oliver thought for a moment, then dashed to the table. He grabbed a mirror, one that hung above the hearth, and angled it toward the window, letting the flame reflect outward, doubling its reach. "Now it's brighter," he said. "Now they'll see." And for a heartbeat, just as the wind shifted, the candle's glow seemed to stretch across the water like a golden path. The storm raged, but the flame refused to bow. The gift within, morning comes, the candle burned until dawn. When the first gray light of morning crept over the horizon, the sea lay calmer, though waves still lapped heavy against the shore. Margaret had fallen asleep in her chair, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Oliver sat beside her, his eyes half closed, but still fixed on the window. The candle was almost gone, just a stub of wax, its flame still proud. And then came the sound, a low, distant hum, the kind that only means one thing in a harbor town: a ship's horn. Oliver jumped up and pressed his face to the glass. Through the morning mist, a vessel was gliding toward the dock, slow and careful. Its hull was familiar, its flag was too. He ran to the door before his mother could stop him. Snow crunched under his boots as he bolted down the path to the shoreline. The wind bit his cheeks, but he didn't care. The ship drew closer, and he could see figures on deck, bundled in coats, waving. One of them raised a hand high above the rest. "Dad!" Oliver shouted, his voice cracking in the cold. "Dad!" From the deck, a voice answered, strong, joyful, trembling. "Oliver." By the time the gangplank hit the dock, Margaret was there too, breathless and weeping. Captain Samuel Wren stepped onto the shore, his coat soaked, his face lined with exhaustion and wonder. He pulled his son into his arms first, then his wife, holding them both as if he might never let go again. "I saw it," he murmured into her hair. The candle. Through the rain, through everything, it was the only thing I could see. She laughed through her tears. Then it did its job. Later, when the townsfolk came to greet the returning sailors, Samuel told the story again and again. The storm had turned them off course. Instruments failed, and even the lighthouse beam disappeared behind sheets of rain. "But then," he said, "I saw a small light, low, golden, steady. It wasn't the lighthouse. It was smaller, closer to shore. That's the one that brought us home." People smiled and nodded politely, thinking it a sweet tale. But those who lived by the sea knew better. Sometimes the smallest lights are the ones that save you. The whisper of Christmas, the candle's promise. That evening, the wrens gathered by the fire. Samuel's sea bag rested near the door. Whiskers claimed it immediately as a new throne. Margaret made stew while Oliver sat cross-legged on the rug, telling his father every small adventure he'd had in his absence. The candle, now replaced by a fresh one, burned again in the window. Its reflection shimmered on the glass, gentle and constant. Samuel reached over and touched his wife's hand. "I didn't know if I'd ever see that light again," he said softly. She smiled. "You will, every night until you don't need it." He looked at Oliver. "And you, thank you, son." Oliver blinked. "For what?" "For keeping watch." The boy grinned, a little shy. It was easy. The candle wanted to stay lit. Outside, the sea was calm, the snow soft. Across the bay, the lighthouse blinked in rhythm, steady as a heartbeat. The whole town seemed to breathe easier. As the evening deepened, Samuel took the brass holder from the windowsill and turned it in his hands. "You know," he said, "on the ship, I told the men about this candle. One of them asked if it was magic." "And what did you say?" Oliver asked. Samuel smiled. "I said it was love. And love, my boy, is the oldest kind of magic there is." The flame flickered as if agreeing. Later that night, after supper, they walked to the beach together. The tide had brought in a line of driftwood and shells, each one shining faintly in the moonlight. Samuel knelt and picked up a smooth, round stone. "The sea leaves gifts if you know where to look," he said. Oliver placed the stone in his pocket. "Can we light the candle again tomorrow?" Margaret nodded. "Every night for whoever needs a way home." And so they did. Epilogue: the candle that kept its watch. Years passed, and the little house by the bay grew older but never cold. The candle burned in that window long after Samuel's last voyage, long after Oliver had children of his own. Sailors who passed Silverbrook Bay swore they could see a golden light from miles out, even on moonless nights. They called it the Wren's Star and said it brought luck to anyone who glimpsed it. But those who knew the family's story understood. It wasn't luck, it was love, made visible. And even now, if you stand by the cliffs on Christmas Eve and look toward the bay, you might see a single light glowing in the distance, steady, patient, shining through every kind of weather. A light that waits, a light that remembers, a light that never once forgot its purpose. And that's how Christmas found its way into another heart.